Welcome back to ET with GOTB. We are back again midweek for the second part of our WSL roundup. Let's get into it. I'm Rachel.
I'm Sophie.
And this is Extra Time with Girls on the Ball. As ever, before we start, I'm going to remind you to make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening to your podcasts or wherever you're watching your podcasts. Always good to get extra subscribers. Love to hear from you. Give us a like, give us a review. Let us know what you think. Always good for us to get some insight from you guys. Also, if you are following us across all of our platforms at Girls on the Ball, you won't miss when we drop extra episodes or our weekly episodes or our Euros coverage, which I feel like is going to start very soon.
Very soon.
Just need to close the chapter on this one.
Yeah.
Eventually. Okay. I'm going to give you the context that we gave last week. Last week we did 6 teams at random, picking them out of a hat, having a chat about their season. I'm interested to see how we do compared to earlier this week, whether we're going to be more concise, whether we're going to ramble a bit more. It's going to be interesting to see the lengths of both episodes. I think last week we wrapped it in about 40 minutes.
Yeah. Aiming for a bit shorter because it's very sunny out there and I want to go sunbathe.
Sophie needs to go and top up her tan because we're not going to be spending our summer in a hot country pretty much. It is meant to be very nice in Switzerland.
It is, but we're going to be working.
True, outside.
Yes.
It's going to be good. Okay, the other context is that these grades are not necessarily compared to the other teams. It's based on what we expected from the club at the beginning of the season, a bit of a comparison to their form last season. Have they improved? Are they going backwards? So before you start complaining about another team scoring versus what your team scored, bear that in mind, please. Okay, we're going to start with our little bit of ASMR. We're running out of teams here now. There's only 6 left. Who we got?
Oh, Chelsea. I mean, this one's easy.
This is going to be easy, we think, we hope. I'm sure Chelsea fans will still tell us they don't like it. But Chelsea finished first, points 60, which I believe is a record. Last year, just the 55 points last year. Also first. Manager at the beginning of the season, Sonia Bonpastor. Manager at the end of the season, Sonia Bonpastor. Top goal scorer, Aggie Beaver-Jones. Highlight of the season, gotta be winning the domestic treble. Low light of the season, not that easy to find one. I'm going to say getting hammered by Barcelona across 2 legs in the semi-finals of the Champions League. That is definitely one they will want to forget, and something they were still thinking about when they picked up their 3rd trophy this season. They were still thinking about next season, we want that trophy, which I love. Shows the kind of mentality of winners. Necessary context. I mean, the necessary context is not explaining away anything. I actually think it allows us to put more praise on Chelsea because they had a new manager, because they had new players coming in, because this wasn't just any old manager coming in situation. This is the end of the Emma Hayes dynasty. There was going to be a lot of change, a lot of eyes on Chelsea to see what can they do now without Emma Hayes in charge. What can Sonia Bonpastor do? And big signings as well. You had Lucy Bronze and Kira Walsh, very pricey signings. You had, of course, broke the record. They broke the record in January with their Naomi Gurma signing. So all of that kind of heaping more pressure, I think, on them. And I think that is necessary context to their success this season. Sophie, what would your season summary be for Chelsea?
I mean, it's hard to find fault because they were unbeaten in the league, kind of the treble, domestic treble. I think we haven't seen the best of them yet, and that's not a criticism. It's more like it's a bit of a scary one because there's so much to improve, you think. I think they quite clearly have the best mentality in the league in terms of finding ways to win games, even when they're not at their best. And I think Sonia Bonpastor and the players, and I've heard Lucy Bronze talk about it, they know they've not been at their best in some games, but they've managed to get the job done and get it over the line, which is the most important thing at the end of the day, because you won't be looking back on this domestic treble in 3 months' time and think they weren't always the best. It was an incredible achievement. So I think that just shows how much Sonia has to work with. She's got another window now to get in players that she wants as well, to really kind of define the squad and see how they want to play. I do think they need to work out their midfield a bit more. Don't necessarily.
We'll
yes,
we'll do the what
no, but like that's not in terms of adding to it. They've got enough midfielders, but more that they need to work out how to utilise Kira Walsh in that system in the best way. I think there are little bits and pieces here and there that they will look to improve, and I think they will want to dominate games more. They will want to score more goals. I think Aggie's had a great season, brilliant season. Her second season for Chelsea in the league to finish top scorer is incredible. I think there will be a disappointment that Mira Ramirez can make an indentation. And, we don't know what's going to happen with Sam Kerr coming back. Obviously, she had a setback in her recovery. But they do kind of need that, number 9. Aggie's numbers are great, but you need bigger numbers, I think.
Yeah.
If you really want to, at the moment, they're spreading the goals quite nicely across the team.
Yeah.
Which works. But at the end of the day, when you think about teams and goal scorers, the ones that have ones registering big numbers generally do the best. So I think that's something to work on. But obviously this is all very slim.
Yeah, but also it's something you touched on there that actually I probably should have provided in the necessary context as well, is that they did have injuries to key players across the season, carried on from last season in Sam Kerr and Mia Fischel. Obviously, Sophie Ingle did her ACL as well. There's been periods where defenders have been out for a time. Lucy Bronze was out for a time. I believe Natalie Bjorn was injured for a bit. And I think actually something that they probably don't massively have to improve on as we get into this, what do they need to improve on, is necessarily that depth. I think one of the things,
they've got depth.
Yeah, one of the things we always talk about teams when they need depth is quality and depth, and I think that is something Chelsea has in spades. Is they can bring off, they could be winning a game at, I think it was when they were beating Manchester City in the second leg of the quarterfinals, and they were bringing on your Kat Macarios, and
they did have a bit of a problem at centre back for a while.
Yeah.
And it's meant that the load on Millie Bright has been huge, because for a while she was the only fit centre back. And they were having to play Lucy Bronze as,
of course, Khadijah Buchanan.
She'll be coming back soon, but she took to her ACL pretty much at the start of the season, or within the first few weeks. Natalie Bjorn, you mentioned. Naomi Goma came in injured
and then picked up a knock.
It's so hard to start at a new club in the middle of the season injured. It's just you can't get your rhythm going. So I think pre-season for her is going to be vital to get her right up to shape. So they did have their issues, injury-wise, where the depth couldn't quite cover it. I was surprised not to see Nuskin used more as a centre-back in those moments, because we know that she can perform really well in those positions. I guess Sonia sees her playing a bit further forward, but, when you're desperate or when you need bodies, that's a good opportunity to she's a good player to be able to use all of the park. So I thought we'd see her a bit more, used more often in those areas.
What I was impressed with Nuskin is that she's, we talk about quality and depth. If you're really stuck on almost any position, she's a Rolls Royce of a player that she can step in and play at that quality. Also, we have to factor in Niamh Charles doing her shoulder right early on in the season, having to put Sandy Baltimore back there, who had an incredible season at left back.
I would say those full back roles are another
depth
thing
area
to think about, because at the moment you've got Lucy Bronze and Ashley Lawrence, who's never really quite hit the heights people expected of her. And I think there's been rumours that she'll be on a swap deal or something. But yeah, I think the cover at right back is going to be key. Cover at left back as well, because ideally you want Sandy Baltimore playing higher up the pitch. She's had to do the job. So if Niamh Charles had obviously an injury at the start of the season, then it was slow coming back from that injury. Yeah. She struggled a bit, I think, to get right up to speed in the middle of the season. So you need some other options in that area, I think, so that you don't have to rely on putting Sandy back.
I'd almost say the thing that they need most is time. And the fact that they've had a season together, Sonia's had time to try and embed some ideas and, to be honest, just get the first season out of the way. Get the first season without Hayes out of the way and have that kind of narrative and hurdle done and dusted. Have a pre-season together with a lot of these players.
The thing I'd say is the problem is that a lot of their players will be playing in the Euros.
Yeah.
So while some players will be back for pre-season, they will have a group who will not come back probably until the latter stages. And then it's actually 6 weeks from the final to the start of the season. It's not the longest turnaround, because those players then have to have a 2-week break.
Yeah.
And then they have to be brought up to speed again. So that's the only thing that kind of goes against them. And not that I don't think it will, but it's just it's something to watch, I guess.
Yeah. And I feel like every young talent or every player, very good player coming to the end of their contract are all linked with Chelsea. So no doubt we will see more signings in the summer as well. Probably the easiest grade you have given. What would we give Chelsea?
A+.
No notes. Keep on doing what you're doing. Okay. Next up.
Tottenham. Yikes.
Tottenham, where are you, my loves? Okay, Tottenham Hotspur finished 11th, 20 points, 40 points off the top. I tell you what, you really see the difference in terms of points with Chelsea when you start looking at where clubs finished off Chelsea. It's crazy. Last year they finished 6th with 31 points, 24 points off the top. Manager at the beginning of the season, Robert Villaham. Manager at the end of the season was Robert Villaham, but he has now been let go by Tottenham Hotspur about a month after the end of the WSL. Top goal scorer, Bethany England. I tell you what, I really struggled with the highlight of the season.
The opening game.
4-0 against Crystal Palace. Sure. And it's a shame because there were a couple of performances. I actually thought their performance against Manchester City at home, I was at that. I was actually really impressed with. But other than that, I don't think there's a real standout moment. Low point of the season, all of it. I think they had a really, really tough season. Necessary context. Yeah, they lost key players. Two particular, Clinton and Bizet, failed to A, replace them, and B, adapt without them and adapt their style without them. I think there was indecisive management at times with players, which I think made consistency and finding any sort of rhythm really difficult. Bethany England was injured for kind of key points towards the end of the season where they really could have used her. Martha Thomas wasn't firing on all cylinders, not getting the goals, so they really struggled in front of goal. And they struggled defensively as well, which at least last season when they had those issues, they didn't happen at the same time. Whereas I feel like this season they really happened at the same time. Any other necessary context you think I need to add in there? They had a few new players come in, but really...
Yeah, and I think the new players needed a bit of time to get up to speed. But I just think that the whole season was a bit of a...
Sophie's season summary?
Yeah, a bit of a write-off. I think there was maybe a bit too much panic in the early stages when things started to not go well. And it meant that there was a real lack of direction and understanding of what Robert Villaham wanted to do tactically. He couldn't decide on whether to use Thomas or England in the 10, or the 9. England was sometimes out on the wings. And when you have a player like Bethany England, when she's fit, and she's the kind of goal scorer that she is, you stick her in the number 9 and you build everyone else around her. She's the one getting you the goals. She's the one who needs to lead that line, and it took him way too long to get to the point where he decided on that. I think, creatively, there was a whole lack of real, creative spark at all. But I think that stemmed from not really knowing what the system was. And it's really stark contrast to last year, where you really understood what his system was.
And players adapted so quickly. It's something we really credited them
with. It's quite amazing how different a season can be, where you go from actually really understanding the system and working around it and building on it. And, like last year, they started really well. They had that game against Chelsea. They created so many chances. They had a really good start to the season. They then went through that bad patch where they conceded a lot of goals, but they learned from that and they tightened up and they finished pretty strongly. This year, they just didn't do any of that. And he completely lost, I think, touch of his focus and his tactics of what he wanted to do with this team. And everyone just looked a bit lost defensively. I just remember that game away at Manchester City. I think they went to 3 at the back, and it was just like everyone was just going in circles and not really understanding what they were supposed to be doing. Was that the one we pushed
Molly Bartrop up?
Yeah, she went into midfield, I think. There was so much experimenting going on, and when you're playing Manchester City, you can't experiment. You have to, batten down the hatches a bit. Didn't replace, as you said, Clinton and Bizet either. I think they were holding out hope that they'd get Clinton in the summer, and that didn't happen. And then, Bizet gets enticed over to Manchester United too, and you just don't replace them properly. You replace them with players who have potential, but they're not there yet.
And look, there were players who I thought, Ashley Neville, as ever, is always key for Tottenham. I thought Ella Morris has been very good. I'm absolutely gutted that she's done her ACL because I felt like this is a really exciting and a good season for her. Never really got the best out of Hayley Rasso, and there's clearly been a bit of a breakdown.
She disappeared halfway through.
A bit of a breakdown in a relationship there as well. Makes you question the kind of player management, player relationship kind of situation and how that's being managed behind the scenes. I think when we started seeing some players put pen to paper who for me, if Robert had hung on, I wouldn't have seen them staying. So I kind of was indicative of where the decision with Spurs was they were going to get rid of him. And I think almost set himself up a bit last year where there were so many things that happened well, whether that's a clear style, whether that's players buying into it really quickly, gelling together really quickly. To have none of that in the second season was a real surprise and disappointment, I think.
And to not even go on like a proper cup run or really anything, it was just
that's the other thing. FA Cup final last year.
There was just no real spark, and I think things just gradually, they didn't win in the second half of the year, did they? Don't think they have a league win since November or something, or maybe there's one since November or end of January maybe. So they went a very, very long time without winning the league, and things just have a habit of snowballing a bit, I think, and going out of control before you even know what's happening.
I'd also say that I think they need to move away from Leyton Orient from Brisbane Road.
Yeah,
I think the ground is not fit for purpose. I don't care if Leyton Orient fans tell me they think it's great. The pitch was regularly poor. If you can't even have a bit of a home advantage when you play at home, you've got a team that doesn't even like the pitch they're playing on, can cause real problems. I remember earlier on in that kind of January, February time, that pitch was just terrible to play on. Facilities aren't great. The layout isn't great. The way it's set up, they have to have the cameras on the same side as the stand where the fans are. It's the way the kind of the stadium's kind of set up. It's the first stand that gets filled. So to have that, just even little things like that, it seems to be a really rigid agreement they're in with Leyton Orient. And I think if Spurs really want to start to improve, not just from getting players in and investing, I think that's another area they need to look at. They need to create a better home because their team deserve it and their fans deserve it. Christ, what do they need to improve? What did I just say? More investment, better stadium, address the defensive issues, replacement for Clinton and Bizet.
I think they need more than that. I think they need a backup striker or a striker who can really, because Bethany England's brilliant, but she does have her injury problems, and so you need someone you can rely on more regularly than just needing a backup number 9. I think. I think
could
they
we
need
see better from Martha Thomas now that Villaham's gone?
I think she was a Villaham player, so he brought her in and he put his trust in her. So I don't see what that change. I don't think the manager changes her.
The signings will show us what Spurs.
Yeah, I think there's always a bit of nervousness around Spurs about where they really are in terms of they've put a lot of investment into the training ground, and they've really got a good setup there. They've signed some good young players. They want to make the academy really good, but they need to, if they want to, challenge in the league, then they need to, or even challenge for the top half of the league, and for a cup run, they need to really think about their playing contingent and trying to get in some, a big name or a couple of big names. They've done it before when they were at risk of relegation. They went out and they got Bethany England, and you need that same kind of urgency, I think, because this year it's not going to be easy. Mm-hmm. You've got London City coming into the league. They are going to spend big bucks, and if you're not keeping up with them, then you're very much in danger of being in that drop zone.
Something that Robert Villahamn was very passionate about was creating the next Lioness and creating homegrown talent. Do you think that commitment has left with him, or do you think that is something that Spurs are going to try and continue?
I hope not, because I think every club needs to have that commitment to, build Lionesses and to invest in their academy. But I did see, if I'm not wrong, that a bunch of their under-21 players have left the club. Someone like an Elkie Boyer, who I think there was quite a lot of hope in. And that's, they bought Leonard Glanning-Williams has signed a new contract. She's the one who's come up from the academy. There will be others within that setup, but you do hope that it won't disappear with him.
Grade for Tottenham Hotspur?
D.
D. Feels a bit harsh, but I think it couldn't be higher. What's next? Does it begin with L?
Liverpool.
Oh, how good is that? Okay, another team who overachieved and then perhaps underachieved this season. They finished 7th, 25 points, 35 points off the top. Last year they finished 4th on 41 points, 14 points off the top. Manager at the beginning of the season, Matt Beard. Manager at the end of the season, interim, Amber Whiteley. Top goal scorer, Olivia Smith. Highlight of the season, knocking Arsenal out of the FA Cup in the quarterfinals, beating United 3-1. They had a couple of ones. Low point of the season, Hard to pick one kind of standout. Perhaps losing to Everton at Anfield again. Everton loves the Merseyside derby. That will be a bit frustrating. I think maybe their lack of consistency this season will be frustrating. Necessary Context came off a high from last season and probably failed to live up to expectations. Do we ever learn? This happens every time. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be Brighton next season? They put all of their transfer hopes, I think, into one basket. Listen, Smith certainly paid off, but I think left them without that quality and depth that we bang on about all the time. And they were hampered with injuries across the season, which I think really contributed to their inability to get any kind of rhythm or consistency. What would you say your season summary is?
Poor first half of the season, difficult first half of the season, better second half of the season. I'm still not overly convinced by the Matt Beard decision. Not to say that Amber didn't do brilliantly when she came in. I think she did. She took up the mantle really well, and they changed the system a little bit, and they got the results. And to get that Arsenal result in the FA Cup, to get the one against United, it wasn't all roses, but the fact that they managed to pick up those results were key, and it's something to build on. And I would like to see her get the permanent one. I think she's been at the club a long time. She obviously clearly loves the place, understands the players, understands the club. And she's a young manager who could, she's had a lot of experience in terms of sitting behind Matt Beard. And maybe it's her time to take on that mantle where, Liverpool aren't going to be going for the league next season, but she could definitely look to get that 5th place finish again. I think the problems this season, not just the injuries, but maybe a bit of an ageing squad in terms of holding on to a few players that they maybe should have replaced a bit earlier. I think, as you said, Olivia Smith was a brilliant buy, but they spent all of their money, all of their allotted budget, pretty much player budget, on her, which left very few. You couldn't build that kind of depth in the squad that you really needed to cover for the injuries that they had. I think the club have really let them down, the women's team down, and I will continue to say that forever.
They do have a new ground they're playing at now.
They do. St Helens, they moved there, and I think it's better than Tranmere, I think. Tranmere was a bit of a problematic ground, more for the pitch than anything else, but the facilities weren't great. It's definitely a much better standard of arena or stadium than they had before. I think in terms, it's still out of the way, so it's still a bit out of the, away from, that Anfield area, and that's in terms of building up your catchment area. I still think there's work to do there, but it's a first season and it takes time to do these things. And obviously they have Melwood, which has been massive in terms of improving the quality of training and standard that they have, and they have everything there. But I do think, Liverpool men just won the Premier League again. They aren't short on the old cash, and their refusal to invest more in the player pool and the player budget side of things, I think is quite frankly not really acceptable, because Liverpool can afford to spend money like Chelsea spend money. They can do it if they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, they've won the league twice. They have a bit of that history in them. They were the kind of the disruptors that stopped that Arsenal dominance for so long, and suddenly came up there with Man City and Chelsea and started to put the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit.
And you could tell it was frustrating Matt Beard a lot before he left. He was always very well behaved in press conferences, but there were little things that he would say that you would know that he was struggling to get more funds out of the board, and I think that's a problem. I think behind the scenes, I think there's been a bit of change, so hopefully that will change things, and the conversations with the higher ups on the men's side, well, in the main club, will in the men's side will kind of link up more with the women's side, but you just never know, and it's a worry.
So what do they need to improve? Depth, more investment, a permanent manager?
Yeah. More investment, a permanent manager. Depth, they need... Hang
on to the key players that they have.
They have to keep Olivia Smith.
There's been rumours.
And there will be rumours, and people will come in for her, but they have
Not just about her?
Well, no, but for Olivia Smith, they need to hold on to her, and there will be maybe a bit of a... I don't know. There could be an incentive if someone came in with big bucks to go, well, we'll take the big bucks, but actually you need to build the squad around her. Give her a chance to really settle in this league. I think a move to someone like a Chelsea is too soon for her. Personally, she's a brilliant player, don't get me wrong, but I think she would excel at a Liverpool. Or,
having another dominant season under her belt.
Yeah,
would be
they need
valuable.
to keep Fuka Nagano. She is an absolute key area of that midfield. There's rumours at the moment that Taylor Hines might be off to Arsenal. I think that's going to be a big blow because she is their captain.
Yeah.
She has been at the club for a while. She has led them on the pitch, and maybe sometimes not always. The consistency hasn't always been there, but she is that leader and kind of figurehead.
And also keeping the likes of Sophie Roman Hogue fit as well. She was such a big buy when they got her in, and then obviously had injuries at the beginning of the season and throughout. So, fitness I think is key as well.
Depth.
Yeah. Okay, give me your grade for this one. You don't have to go with what I've written, but
I'll go C.
C?
Yeah.
C. Question for you, as we were talking about that. Is this season the one with the most manager sackings that we've had? You had Gareth Taylor, Jonas Eidevall, Laura Kaminsky,
Probably
Matt Beard. Who else am I missing? Anyone else? At least 4.
Yeah.
Aston Villa. 5. Do you think, when you think about it, like, could you imagine, let's say 5, I've probably missed one, out of 12 teams. Could you imagine 15 managers getting sacked in the Premier League in one season?
No. And I think it's been a lot. I think there is actually... I'd have to look into it more, but I think recruitment and club recruitment, there's maybe a piece there about whether, they're really in touch with what's right.
Are they addressing the wrong problem and pulling the wrong lever, essentially?
Well, not even just in the sacking, but in the actual recruitment of personnel in the first place. I'd love to know, for example, why, I don't know, what was it about Leif Smerod that interested Palace over someone who knows the game in England more? Or what was it about Robert DePaul that really intrigued, because these coaches, yes, they've coached. Yeah. Now the end
but it's crazy.
But what is the kind of criteria for clubs going out to get coaches that maybe haven't already shown themselves in the women's game? And why is it then that you're going for them over someone like a homegrown coach who...
If you're going to give someone a chance.
Yeah, because what is it between the two of them? That's what I'd really like to understand. Why are the, coaches coming through the development scheme and all of that stuff, who are pretty much the ones at the top of it anyway, pretty much ready and forced to look overseas to go and get a coaching job or a manager job? Why are they being overlooked for coaches that aren't actually at the top of the game? They're not like Emma Hayes or I don't know.
Not many are. But I also
Sonia
think...
Bonpastor, they're not at that level. So what is it that's intriguing clubs to go and get them and pick them up?
There's that. And for me, there's also that disconnect and naivety to think we have the talent and we have the depth that we need in the squad. All we need is a better manager. And I do think there's a disconnect from the higher-ups to what's actually needed. And I think it's perhaps an easier solution to just investing and giving it a bit more time.
And because I think, if you take Aston Villa, for example, obviously DePaul was a really bad choice. But I think actually going then, on the flip side, going to get Natalia Arroyo, who had a really good time in Spain.
Hang on, maybe you'll pick them out next, Sophie.
No. Yeah, but she I think that
and they took
shows
their time.
The change in decision making is
and they took their time, which I think.
How did you know?
This is random, I promise you that, but it is Aston Villa next. I had a feeling about it. I didn't want you to waste all your good anecdotes. Okay, Aston Villa finished 6th. Points 25, 35 points off the top. Last year they finished 7th on 24 points, 31 points off the top. Manager at the beginning of the season, Robert DePaul. Manager at the end of the season, Natalia Arroyo, via Sean Goater. Top goal scorer, Rachel Daly, as ever. Highlight of the season, got to be smashing Arsenal at home. 5-2? Crazy game. Low point of the season, the whole first half. I think they really struggled in the first half of the season, and the vibe and the atmosphere and everything around the team just felt really kind of down. Necessary context to manager a merry-go-round and a relegation battle to contend with, which I think when they did get in Natalia Arroyo was probably not what she thought she was being brought in for, and kind of had to rethink her plans a little bit when she first came in. But I think had you asked me in January, February time whether Aston Villa would finish 6th, that was the biggest surprise for me. And there was a moment towards the end of the season, and it was similar with Tottenham, where I remember looking at the table and going, when did Aston Villa become 6th and Tottenham become 11th? You know, because that mid-table was so congested. There was 8 points between 5th and 11th.
Yeah, one could finish anyway.
So, yeah, give us your Sophie season summary, please.
I mean, kind of summed up. Season of two halves yet again. I think maybe the due diligence wasn't done around Robert De Power, and that kind of
came back to bite them.
Came back to bite them in the butt pretty hard, I think. Obviously, he didn't click with the players. I think there was such a down. You could just tell in that first half of the season, the players weren't enjoying life, and that showed on the pitch. That kind of they didn't really have it was weird because that first game away at Chelsea, they looked quite positive, but they just dropped off the edge of a cliff pretty soon after, and they lost all their kind of spark. And they did some good recruitment over the summer in terms of they needed to start refreshing the squad. And
Chastity Grant has
they started to do that. They brought in Missy Bocan, who had a really strong end to the season. Chastity Grant, obviously a big buy and will be incredible for them, I think. But yeah, I think it was really down to that management at the start of the season that really made them start off on that bad footing. When things changed at Christmas, I think they got rid of him at the right time. It allowed them to have the Christmas break to figure out what to do. They took their time with finding Natalia. She is an exciting coach. I think you can see that already. And I don't want to hype her up too much, but what she did in Spain, she was pretty exciting. She is a bit different as well in terms of the way that she approaches the game. As you said, I think it was a struggle because when they appointed her, they didn't think they were in a relegation battle. They thought they would probably be quite safe in that bottom half of the table. And I think she came in trying to implement a style that they didn't really have room to try and figure out. They just needed to get it over the line. And once they did, that's when you kind of saw all of the pressure off, and they started to play in the way that she is going to be.
Because it's crazy to think that Aston Villa were down fighting with Crystal Palace around that relegation, and there were games where it was like, this is going to swing it. If Palace win this, then it's still on, blah, blah, blah. And then they finished 6th.
But they had that freedom in the final 3-4 games in the season. As soon as they got
confidence,
saved,
creativity.
Yeah, they just were like, well, we can go and attack now, and we can go and play the way our manager wants us to play. We don't have to worry about, And yes, that resets next year, and you have pressure again next year to do well. But I think the summer is a real good chance for her as well to settle in. To come in the middle of the season is hard. To come in without the squad that you want is hard. I think they've made some moves. They've made, getting Rachel Daly to sign again is big because she is in the latter years of her career. She won't be going forever, but she's she's still that goal scorer that you can revolve around, and she is that leader as well, the captain. So that's key. They just need to get in some younger players, I think, as well.
Absolutely. So I guess what do they need? I'd say a bit of a refresh.
Yeah.
More depth and quality and depth as well.
And to have, more depth. I think, the partnership between Anna Patton and Lucy Parker has the potential of being a really, really good one. Mm-hmm. But what do you have behind them? And now that Dan Turner and Rachel Corsi have gone, you have to look at that area of the pitch, I think, to bolster up. Again, the same at right and left back. I think they are starting to see, they've lost Jill Byings back on, she was only on loan, so she's gone. They need to find a replacement.
Jordan Nobbs.
For her. Jordan Nobbs has gone. I think Jordan Nobbs was probably a bench player at this point under Natalia. Not that I think that she is at that stage of her career yet, but I think it was clear that she wasn't quite in the starting lineup for her. So I think there's foundations to build on. Just need a bit more depth.
Is this a team you're excited about next season? I think I'm probably most excited about Aston Villa. And again, I don't want to put on the pressure, but
if they have time over the summer to work on that style of the football that they were playing at the end of the season, which was super, exciting, creative football, I think they could. What do the kids say? Cook next season?
Ooh, get you. All right, give me a grade. Whether I was too nice, I don't know, but give me your grade.
No, I think B- is good. I think
given where they were.
I think things can change so quickly in this game, but I think the end of the season just bumped them up, a grade.
Massively. Okay, we've only got 2 left, so it's not difficult, but
Brighton.
This was a team I was excited about at the beginning of last season. I think I was right to be. They finished 5th. Quite impressed they finished 5th.
Don't get excited though.
No, but they were literally holding the door open for anyone to take 5th and nobody wanted it. They finished on 28 points, 32 points off the top. Last year they finished 9th on 19 points, 36 points off the top. Manager at the beginning of the season, Dario Vidicic. Manager at the end of the season, Dario Vidicic.
Well done, Brighton. I'm not sure there's been a season for quite a while where they haven't got rid of a manager.
Yes, actually, well done. Top goal scorer, Nikita Paris. Highlight of the season, I've gone with their home form. I think they made Crawley a little bit of a fortress. There was something about playing there that they just played with confidence and got some good results there against top teams as well at times, both Arsenal and Chelsea. So yeah, I've gone with that. Low point, I'd say the beginning of 2025, they couldn't buy a win for a while. I think it took them, 4, 5, 6 games or something to get a win in 2025. And that was the moment where I thought they might slip out of 5th. I think they briefly slipped out of 5th for a weekend.
They definitely opened the window and no one took it.
Yeah. Necessary context, new manager, new players, new style, a style that Vidicic was committed to. And it reminded me a lot of Robert Villaham in his first season, where he was almost like a style above all else because he felt they had to play it regularly. They had to play it under pressure for them to properly commit to it and get to grips with it and not only do it when it was easy, much to our chagrin sometimes where we got stressed about playing out from the back. But you could clearly see a style from the off. What would your season summary be, Sophie?
I think it's probably been a huge learning curve for Vidicic this campaign. It's been a great season for Brighton, all in. But as you say, there was a drop-off and there were some worrying signs, and even in that first part of the season. But like the game at the Emirates against Arsenal, they just completely got torn apart. I think he learned a lot from those moments. I think actually the game that showed me that he was learning was the Man United game at home. And the first half, Man United were all over them. And he changed things up for the second half and realised that, he couldn't be quite so tactically naive at times, in terms of not that he knew what he wanted to do in terms of the possession-based football, but you also have to know that against teams... when to do it, and against the teams that have a stronger talent pool, and have higher quality players, all in, that you can't really go all out against them. You have to be a bit more sensible with the way that you approach games. I think there will be a bit of a refresh this summer as well. For them, Fran Kirby, when she was fit, she held the team together, and I think that helped them when she came back at the end of the season.
Because they lost Vicky Losada for a bit of the season as well, which was difficult.
Yeah, and I think, but like Fran Kirby still has that ability to change a game on a dime and to connect the midfield to the attack. And when she's not there, they were a different outfit. I think you started to see Jelena Kankovic get a bit of form as well. She's struggled, I think. At Chelsea, she struggled. She's got talent in there, but she just needs to find the confidence to bring it out. And you started to see it at the end of the season.
I think they did a really good job with the players they got in last season to have enough maturity and experience within that squad to be able to commit to the style. And I think if you had a load of kind of younger, inexperienced players, it would have been more difficult to get them to buy in and stick to it when things were difficult. And I think having players like Nikita Paris, Fran Kirby, I know Losada wasn't new, but like players like that, Torres Dottir, Guro Bergsvand, both gone, which I think is going to be a big loss to them. But players like that who understood what it meant to kind of bed in a style, I think massively helped them. The game that stands out for me, even though they lost it, was the away game to Chelsea. It was such an exciting game. And they just would not go away. It didn't matter that they were at times, they'd be losing the game. They would not let go. And I think that was a real shift in mentality for a team like Brighton, who would be understandable to maybe roll over when you're being beaten by Chelsea at home and they're bringing off some of the players they were bringing off the bench. They wouldn't, and they made it really difficult. And that game was a really exciting game. And I got excited watching Brighton this season, and I think that wasn't always the case. I think the likes of Madison Haley, Nikita Paris, Michelle Adjumang, players like that may not have been consistently in form all season, but they came into form at the right times that allowed them to kind of keep
I
nudging
think they need
forward.
a bit more productivity and
yes.
depth.
Yes, well, what do they need to improve?
I mean, Nikita Paris had a brilliant season, but like her numbers need to be better still, and that needs improvement. Madison Haley, I'm really impressed with her, but again, I think she scored something like 4 goals this season for an attacking play. You need people like getting in with the goals a bit more.
Kiko
Seika is a huge talent, but also had that brilliant opening game, had a brilliant game against Arsenal. She has that real quality to be able to change games, but that consistency again, it's that consistency piece, I think, for all players and the management as well. They need to look at the defence because they've lost Torres Dote, who maybe was a bit inconsistent herself, but is experienced and had a level of international experience. Bergsvand, she was vice captain when Losada wasn't playing. So they need to bring in experience and high quality experience, I think. And I think it's, and then you can balance it out with like something that's worked really well this season is, getting Maisie Salmons in. And she's performed brilliantly. She's, really come on so much in the last 2 years. I think she's an absolute quality midfielder. She can play, 6. She's been playing the 6 for the under-23s, but she can play higher up as well. She's got that versatility about her. And you can build a team around her. You just need to keep her healthy. But I think you can balance that kind of youth side with the experience.
So like most squads, more depth, improve defensively especially. And I'd also say a plan B. And I know we see that when managers are trying to implement their style and they're very committed to it, but it's knowing the when and knowing the...
They did it against Arsenal.
Yeah. So
you just need to do that more.
Yeah. And, we often say it about a City, and then you see what City do when they not get rid of, but don't go plan A against a Barcelona or a Chelsea, and they go plan B. Because I think one of the difficulties for Brighton in the latter stage of the season is that people figure them out. And in the first half of the season, no one expected what Brighton were doing. Second half of the season, people knew what they were coming up against, and I think they struggled to adapt when that happened. So, I think that's what they need. Overall grade?
B+.
B+. I'm pleased with that. All right. Guess what's left?
I can't actually remember.
Bell.
Leicester City. Must be, yes.
Yes, it is. Imagine if it wasn't. We'd have done something wrong.
Yeah.
Leicester City finished 10th, 40 points off the top. They finished on 20 points, same as Tottenham, but weirdly with a better goal difference, which you would not have expected from Leicester early on in the season. Last year, they also finished 10th on 18 points, 37 points off the top. So slight improvement. Manager at the beginning of the season, Amandine Mikel. Manager at the end of the season, Amandine Mikel. Top goal scorer, Yanis Cayman. Highlight of the season, I'm going to go with that draw to Chelsea. It was an example of what they could do on their day when things went right. Struggled to find a low point of the season because I didn't feel like there was a load.
First half of the season, I think, away form as well.
Okay. Necessary context. Injuries. My God, to key players, particularly up front.
Injuries not spread around the squad.
Yeah. Massively hampered their performance, their creativity in front of goal. It is their highest points tally. In spite of that, I think they did very well defensively, particularly at the beginning of the season. For a good chunk of the season, outside of the top 4, they had the best goals defensive record. That's the word I'm trying to use. And I think the context is also they had a new manager who it was very difficult to try and implement a style when you lost like all of your number 9s, and her press conferences at times were a hoot because I think she genuinely would have considered putting the goalkeeper up front if it wasn't absolutely.
She also likes to break the fourth wall.
She breaks the fourth wall. She's talking to someone in the room and then she'll look over at you and kind of give you a little bit of an eyebrow.
Give the camera.
It's so funny. But she at times felt it seemed not out of ideas, but she was just like, "What do you want from me? Like I've literally got no one up front who."
I think she. Yeah, certainly when you.
Sorry, Sophie's season summary.
You lose Mouchon to an ACL. Shaw's not got injured as well. Hannah Kane was injured for the first bit of the season. There were, Shannon O'Brien, I think, was just coming back at the beginning of the season or early in the season. There were some key injuries to those areas. Sam Tierney, when, got that ankle injury and was missing for a good chunk as well. And it meant that she just had, no options. She had to put Takarada as a number 9, and Takarada is normally known as the deeper lying midfielder. Ruby Mace played as a striker at one point. She was literally trying everything but the goalie.
What is it you said? If you have 2 feet and
you
know 2 legs, you can go up front and you can maybe score a goal.
So I think the summer will be. They have to invest. The summer will be vital. I do think you started to see in that second half of the season what they can do. I don't think her teams will ever possess the ball in terms of get the big numbers on possession, but they seem to be quite happy to get 30 to 40% possession and just take their opportunities when they came. And we saw that
towards the end of the season.
Yeah, in the game against Brighton, wasn't it? Where, they were under pressure for a bit of it. They didn't have a lot of the ball, but they took their chances and they were so good on the counter-attack. And if they can get someone like D Rose back up to speed again as well, unfortunately not been quite the same since her Achilles injury, but if they can get her back to speed, she is like a terrifying player on the counter-attack, and you could utilise her. Their defensive performances were so good in relation to what you would expect for them. And I think Sophie Howard had a brilliant season. Julie T-Board as well. Janina Leitzig is a top keeper as well. So it's going to be interesting to see who they hang on to this summer, who they can get in.
Yes, absolutely. But I also want to give credit to the fact that they are doing very well in terms of bringing young players through and giving young players opportunities. Nelly Lass has had a good season. I was so impressed with her at the World Cup back in October, and it was great to see her getting time and minutes under Natalia. And she's very open about the fact that if you're playing well, you get to start. Age doesn't matter.
Missy Goodwin's still young.
Yeah.
Shannon O'Brien's still young, I think. So, there are opportunities for players to keep, to stamp their mark and to make their... And she has been always pretty good at that. She was good at that in France as well. She's always had to make a lot out of a little, and I think that's her strength.
We might be able to see more of that next season with a squad, a bit more of her making. This is what they need to improve. Depth, repetition here. They started to find the net towards the latter part of the season, but I think they need a bit of time to actually let the manager implement a style, have a transfer window under her belt, have a squad available to her. They do need to invest a little bit more on the pitch. She was kind of making a bit of a plea towards the end of the season, an indirect plea, talking about how wonderful the weather is in Leicester and how lovely the pubs and coffee shops are. Oh yeah. She was definitely doing a bit of a sales pitch.
I think another highlight off the pitch would be, as you said, her press conferences, always a laugh. Yes. Always enjoyable.
Yes. And nice to have good managers in press conferences. I think Natalia, I think Amandine, Dario, I think they all speak really well in press conferences, are really open.
And they speak when they lose, and that's key, because we've had so many managers that when they lose a game, they just, shut up a bit, or don't want to speak, or don't want to even talk to the media.
Yeah.
And actually, if you can speak well when you lose, you're going to win people over as well.
Yeah. I would also say about losing Robert Villaham is I'm sad that we've lost a manager who will speak on issues, openly on issues, and not kind of say I haven't seen it, say I haven't read it or heard about it or anything like that. I do feel like, and that's also down to the press officer as well, he's clued up on things, but he always spoke very well and very openly, and was very, very committed to the growth of the women's game. So, but Amandine, Natalia, all good additions in terms of, media wise, and also more women in the WSL as well, which I think is...
Yeah, and I know there was some grumbles with Miguel, but I think that context is so key, and she needs time. She needs more than a season.
It'd be a bit unfair to judge her on that.
Time. And I just hope that with the men's side going down, it doesn't have an impact on the investment.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. Okay, what would you grade them this season?
C+.
Yeah, I think that's fair given all of the context in and around it. And sometimes in the media, we don't always get that necessary context. And as I said the last time, we're nice. We have been quite nice. We are always keen to try and give the context and look at what's going on and what could be contributing to things before we make a judgment. So don't come for us for being nice. That is it from us for our WSL roundup, Sophie. Finally, partway through June, we managed to close the book on the 2024-25 season. Finally, all 12 teams. Do let us know how you would have scored them. we have now got our Euros build-up coming up, which we asked last week. Another thing that we'd like to hear from you is the kind of stuff you would like to see from tournaments, some rogue suggestions, some things that we definitely don't have control over or can do. But nonetheless, let us know. We'd like to hear from you. Also, keep an eye out for some of the stuff we're going to be dropping next week and onwards around the coverage that we're going to be doing and what we're going to be providing during the Euros, because we'd like to get as many of you on board following our stuff as possible. Otherwise, we'll chat to you again very soon.